The alarms of Mine Shaft 15 of the Mars Volta Mining Base murdered my ears on that fateful day. I looked up as I stepped in my suit. It was more form-fitting than the 70-foot fiber-reinforced walls of this cavern, which allowed factor vehicles carrying tons of rocks to be processed. My breath fizzled my microphone, created condensation on my helmet screen, and clouded my hearing. Vital signs and a confusing mess of numbers on either side of my helmet screen kept my sanity intact. I was alive, and I never knew how important that distinction would be. The yowls coming from the deep confines of the mine were as vicious as they were direct. I walked past the machines coated in moisture from their labors, as if they sweated from the hard work, when in reality, the humidity was the perils of ice sheets that melted into the catastrophic atmosphere that would have killed any of us. Walker and Brady were at the end of this cavern. It was hard to see their faces since they were in their brown or black mecha suits. Everyone wore one down here, and it was difficult to work in, even if they were made for this dangerous line of work. Walker himself was a tall man, but there was no smile on that sleek face of his.
We're behind by a whole week, and you allowed this to happen!
Brady made his suit look fuller due to his stature and broad shoulders.
Right. And I allowed it to drop down there because I'm so dumb, right? I never called you down here to go drink poison. I called her.
He pointed in my direction.
O'Hara, can you coordinate the auxiliary shaft's evacuation to the tower as per protocol?
I nodded my head. That's what I was called down here to do, but I had to see it for myself. One of the excavators, which was one of the manual digging vehicles, dropped down one of the crevices. A loud skittering noise roared into my speaker. It was like metal fragments shaking in a bag. My teeth clattered from its high-pitched grind. What was that? A few people were looking around, so I wasn't crazy. Brady and Walker were still arguing, though. They learned, just like I did, that the oddities of being underground were best ignored for the sake of your sanity.
Do you realize who you're talking to? I should be meeting with the surveyors. But it's a good thing I was evaluating the progress of the work because I can see why you're behind. Screw-ups like this!
A groan echoed as the excavator buckled and slid down a few feet.
Welcome to the job, Pencil Neck.
Don't you guys think that we should focus on the fact there's millions of dollars currently in a hole right now? They will call in tomorrow. We should get it out before that to give them some good news, don't you think? The two men made reluctant shrugs in agreement. After a brief discussion, they worked out their disagreement and Walker walked away. Brady groaned and shook his head. I said, "The hazard team is coming to assist you. Do you need anything from my end?"
No, I got it.
I took that and led the staff out of that mine shaft and made sure the hazard team could do their job. After that, I took off my suit and went back to my post, where I saw Dunkley. He was a young lad that was fresh in the face and enthusiastic for this job. If trying to keep two men from strangling each other was a worthy job. Hey Dunkley, how was your patrol?
Everything's going fine inside. Checked the oxygen dilation tank. It's been working well so far.
It better. Make sure you check it in the morning and the evening, based on the chart. That's when the system recirculates the filters.
Pretty loud, too?
Sometimes I wonder if it's an earthquake it's producing.
Oh, Robinson was complaining about the sounds he was hearing from beyond the surface.
I leaned in. Sounds?
Yeah, he said it sounded like something was being torn apart. He was worried it was the rock breaking. It was really loud, too. So we slowed the progress of the drills. I have to tell Walker, but I haven't found him yet.
He's at the surveyor's branch office, so you can catch him there. The alarm bell shouted in our eardrums. I glanced at the panel, and my eyes flickered over to the cameras, where I saw nothing out of the ordinary. The men were moving away from the accident site, and Brady, if I was correct, was pointing aggressively at something. These guys again? I asked in frustration.
Oh, something's going down on Mine 15. You want me to check it out?
No, don't sweat it. I already know the situation that's going on down there, so I might as well just deal with it.
All right, madam.
I put back on my suit and went down to the mine shaft. Once I got through the 100-foot gate in my 3-wheeled motorcraft, the silence hit me differently. The only thing pounding in my ears were the cracks of stone under the wheels. Where was everybody? Yes, I evacuated the auxiliary staff, but the main drilling crew should be here with the hazard consolidation team. I breathed out and decided they were probably too busy dealing with that accident. After I passed down the first channel and reached the next to an idle excavator, that skittering sound returned. At that point, it didn't even sound so distant. The sound got louder and more distorted. I stopped the motorcraft and looked around. Was this the sound that Robinson was talking about? This did not sound like rock breaking in from the inside, but I could take no chances. A mine shaft collapse was one of the worst disasters that could happen outside of a fire. I had to be sure, so I tried to call Walker on my radio, but I got no answer. Dunkley was my best option. Hey, is Walker around you right now?
Yeah, hold on.
O'Hara?
Walker, I'm hearing noises in Mine 15, and Robinson talked about noises in Mine 6. Did you see anything on the maps when you did your usual scans?
What? No, I saw nothing. What noises?
Look, I don't know yet, Walker, but you need to check it. A shadow passed by me. Was it over me? I refocused my mind on the call. Just check it out. I don't want to hear that we didn't do our due diligence, okay?
Pretty sure it wasn't me. They must be drilling wrong like they always do. But I'll check it out.
I sat in a deep shadow. My head turned, and all I saw was this huge blob with long, thin arms, like some malnourished octopus flying around. I froze. The words were stuck on my tongue. Those arms moved over me and waded the air as if it was the sea. I tried to get myself to move, but all of my muscles seized up. That beast, monster, whatever it was, levitated across my motorcraft. The arms lifted this monster and raised it like a divine being. My powerlessness was a mere sneeze to its might. I reckoned the monster was around 20 feet tall, but raised taller than 40 feet when its arms pushed it up. It passed right by me. I shook myself out of my own mental quagmire and finally remembered I had a life to live. After I swallowed the terror that raised in me, I stepped out of the motorcraft with my first leg. It was better to sneak out behind this monster. The moment my boot touched the earth, a creaking echoed from the press of my boot. This monster spun around and its arms crept closer to me. I froze. Should I run? It was not moving towards me, but I started to lose my balance with my other leg. It hits the seat as I tumbled back. Those slimy arms flew at me. Dull screeches rattled my eardrums and my back hits the ground ungracefully. That loud skittering noise consumed every part of my body. My mind was stuck on the merciless choke my throat could not break. All I could do was hear it. I hated the sound the most. My legs got clutched tight and rolled into a knot by a revolting hold. I willed myself to get out of there. But how? That monster's sickening noise roared through my speaker and made my teeth clatter in insanity. My hands grasped my helmet, and I shook my head as if I was shaking off a swarm of bugs. I whipped my hands around as I pulled myself back using my elbows. The monster dragged me closer. Alarms blasted my eardrums as I tried to focus. I screamed and grabbed a rock as it continued to drag me closer. A muddy blob of skin stared down at me. Where in God's name was the face on this thing? I curled my clenched hand over the rock, into the arm around my leg. A loud screech pierced the walls and my ears, but it let me go. I jumped up and ran. My legs kicked aside stones and tumbled me forward at times. I kept running, never looking back. The cries of that beast chased me like a bad dream, but it was starting to fade, even if my fear was not. My breathing got labored, almost painful in my rapid gasps. I stopped and looked around. Where was I? The lights were not too bright here, so the shadows ruled with an iron fist. I could still make out the shapes of a standing drill, with huge wheels and some flatteners. A scattered variety of trowels and concrete slabs laid on the ground near the unused motorcrafts. A distant call for help echoed throughout those caverns. There were so many flashing lights among the indicators and graphics on my helmet screen, yet it was so dark. It was all too confusing. That skittering noise was distant, but I knew that thing was following me. I needed to get out of here. My radio buzzed and beeped, but I ignored that. I glared at the alarms. My hand grabbed the uncomfortable shoulder, and I felt the mangled shoulder plate within its structure. Crap! My suit was compromised, but the damage was only on the surface. I needed to change the suit quickly before the carbon dioxide seeped into the inner layer of the suit. The radio kept beeping, so I turned it on. I turned on my lamp. That scream was too close. A man ran down a corridor several feet from me, but he never got to the other side when a slender arm went right through his suit. I froze in horror as the man screamed. That arm, it was the same arm of that monster. It lifted the man high as his blood dripped onto the floor. The monster moved into the space and revealed its ugly form. As for the pierced man, that arm smacked him onto the rocky floor. His helmet cracked, and no sound escaped the unmoving man's body. Not even a scream emanated. That monster pushed that man under it. The monster turned towards me, snapping its arms into the floor and surrounding the walls in some weird reverence. It turned away from me and continued on its way. It didn't see me? My radio crackled and blasted Brady's voice.
O'Hara, come in! They're all over the place! O'Hara!
In shock, I fumbled the lamp and it hit the ground. I rushed to pick it up and cut off my radio. The low hum of that infernal noise made me swallow the hard lump in my throat. I looked up, and the monster stared in my direction. Hell, I wasn't even sure. It's not like I could see a face or anything. But I could feel it. It was me that it was focused on. The moment it moved towards me, I knew. I almost ran, but I remembered something important. It could not see. The monster's arms snapped and hit the walls and floor as it advanced towards me. Yes, if I stood still and made no sound, it could not find me. There was only one problem with this plan, though. It would run into me eventually, if it did not turn away. So that was a risk. That monster got closer, and its looming shadow covered me completely. I glanced at my vitals and noted the temperature rising in my suit. Crap. I jumped to the side. Its arm sliced down and tried to skewer me. I dropped and rolled into a motorcraft. The monster growled, and that skittering sound it made shook my soul and bones to the core. I gripped the side of the motorcraft and pulled myself into it, hitting aside a trowel. After turning it on, 3 arms pierced into it. Son of a bitch! My hand grabbed a trowel and cut into one of the arms. The monster cried out and bashed the motorcraft. My heart got shell-shocked. I jumped over an arm and dropped into the carriage bay of the standing drill. The seat groaned and the drill got pushed to the side by the mammoth beast. The motorcraft was lifted off the ground as its wheels spun. I stared in awe, but kicked my fascination into high gear as I tried to get to the other side of the carriage bay. The monster ripped the motorcraft in half, and before I could get out, 2 arms snapped onto the ground and blocked my way. I seized up. Sweat canoed down my face, hitting my eyelid on the way down to my chin. My eyes blinked, trying to get my sight clear. That skittering sent a chill up my spine. Metal snapped, and the glass cracked around me. My body shook when the standing drill platform tilted up, I rolled into the cushion and stared over the dashboard. The ugly, sickly surface of that monster moved near the drill's bit as it tried to wrap its arm around the carriage bay. I was being crushed inside here. My elbow hit the dashboard as the seat tightened closer to it. I caught my breath as my face burned under the failing system of my suit. My hand gripped the dashboard and tried climbing out through the front window. An arm thrust into the carriage bay, but I dodged it. My elbow hit a lever, so I retreated inside. The drill looked so appealing to me as I laid there at this monster's mercy. That drill might be the thing to save me. I reached for the dashboard and glanced around at the confusing buttons and knobs. My brain almost short-circuited until I caught sight of the key. I slipped my hand under the hairy arm trying to smack me and turned it. The engine of the drill whirred and roared over the crushing metal of my little cage. I gasped. The monster moved to the back of the platform, intrigued by the noise. Shit! I could not kill it now, unless I gave it a louder noise. Brady, tell me, how do I turn on the drill revolution?
What? Where the hell are you? We're dying over here and you're...
Tell me or I'll die!
What? Oh, for real?
I felt dread. Hair stood on the back of my neck. I turned my head. An arm rushed past my helmet after I pulled away just in time. Yes, Brady! The faster the better!
Hold the REC arm that's next to the steering wheel. The switch is red at the top of the dashboard. The orange knob is the level determinator. If you need it to drop, use a big black lever at the end of the dashboard.
I followed the instructions and the drill started spinning. The monster lifted the drill carriage bay and the platform with it. I rolled into the back of the carriage bay, screaming. The drill spun, and its caustic screech outstripped the engine. Its noise sent out a ferocious echo in the caverns. I was suspended for a moment and slammed into the seating before I hit the underside of the dashboard. My head raised, and I saw the monster moving to the front. Yes! Keep going! I lifted myself and grabbed the black lever. The monster raised its arms towards the drill, but I watched the meaty body those arms were connected to. Once it got under the drill, I pulled the lever. The drill pummeled into the monster and sprayed blood all over the window of the carriage bay and drill platform. Its chaotic scream ruptured the whole cavern. I dropped back and laid in the seat. The drill ground to a screeching halt. Silence crushed my brain until Brady's voice woke me up from the confusion.
O'Hara, are you okay?
Yeah, I am. I came out of the winding caverns of Mine 15 and reached the gate and pressurization chamber that separated us from those monstrosities. When Brady and the other miners saw me, they had no happy faces. I was covered in blood, and a lot of fleshy stuff that I didn't want to think about, much less assume. I entered the pressurization chamber and stood there patiently, as if following the biomedical and viral infestation protocols mattered. After carbon dioxide got absorbed out of the chamber, the disinfecting spray and burning smoke came into the room. Once it cleared, it beeped for the initial filling of oxygen. I immediately pulled off my helmet. The helmet hits the floor and I gasped hungrily to breathe fresh air. The alarms beeped and the glass door pulled down. I pulled off the suit's exoskeleton and inner skeleton too, before I walked past the gate. Brady walked up to me.
What are we doing? This whole place is overrun with those things.
Did you get your people out of the mine? His face dropped.
No, 2 people are still missing. I already verified 4 dead. Those animals, whatever they are, they killed them. Dunkley. Well, here's the young chicken head now.
I turned around and saw Dunkley carrying an injured worker. After he was cleared and came in, I said, Dunkley, bring that person over to the medic and come with me. We're going to get better adjusted. Brady, give all of your sub-drillers the Article 6 and get everybody back to the compound. Not one soul should be in these mines. Make sure they're head-checked. We're going to lock these gates. I don't know what the hell those are, but you do not let them pass this gate. I do not care if you have to ram one of the vehicles into the gate to block it, but you do not let that thing pass this gate. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Don't worry about it.
Dunkley and I needed to protect this place, so after I changed my suit, Dunkley and I logged into the safe of our security room. The safe door opened and revealed the laser rifles standing up in the glass case. I said, "I never thought this day would come when I would have to use these things."
Do you think these guns are going to be effective against those things?
I knew little about guns. All I knew was these guns would burn through metal like it was water through toilet tissue. They better work. I took out the first rifle and handed it to Dunkley.
Whoa, sweet!
He lifted the laser rifle and admired it. "Let's go." We went back to Mine 15, determined to find the last person left inside and lock it down. 2 monsters interacted with us on our way through these caverns. The laser gun hurt it, spilling blood, but not to a lethal extent. Those monsters didn't stay though, to get any long-term exposure, and we weren't exactly looking for revenge. Rescuing the last person was the priority. Our adventure did not end with good news though, for that person was dead. My radio was chaotic, with a bunch of people shouting for information or ordering each other around. Walker was constantly asking me to talk to him and explain what was going on. I was going to have to deal with that later. Right now, we knew nothing about these invaders. We knew nothing about where they came from or their goal. That fact worried me. "Dunkley, I have an idea. Follow me somewhere and make sure you have my back." We went looking for that monster I killed. Dunkley helped me to cut off one of the arms, and we jetted back to the home base. The moment me and Dunkley got back, I got an earful.
O'Hara!
I saw Walker jogging towards me.
O'Hara, what the hell is going on?
What was I supposed to say? That I saw a giant monster walking through the caverns, killing and slaughtering people left, right, and center? I tried to collect my thoughts and calm down. We have to send out a distress signal. A lot of people got injured. Some are dead. His face twisted into a nasty scowl.
From what?
We have an extraterrestrial threat. Walker, get all of your people to the checkpoint, just like we drilled last year. Go! He was about to speak, but I had little patience for an argument. Please, Walker, you're the smartest person in that department. You're the only one who remembers the drill exactly as we did it. You're the best person to lead the team. Can you do this for me? He frowned, but finally, he nodded his head in the affirmative. With his confirmation, I immediately ran off to send out that distress signal. The rest of the day was a mix of chaos and muted terror. Everybody was searching for an explanation, but nobody could give them any. Not even me. All I could tell them was that there was no work going to be done today. A lot of people asked me if we were going to go down for the bodies of their dead friends and colleagues, and my initial answer was we would, just not now. As much as I would, for the sake of my humanity, try to recover them, it was a fool's errand when we knew nothing about those creatures. The Volta's company last sent protocol-based transmissions at least told me that they were going to suspend all shipments and airspace drops onto Mars until they got more information about what was happening. That did not please Walker, and a lot of people, because it sounded like we were being abandoned on Mars. I hoped that was not the case. We needed to sit tight and just hope for a transmission from headquarters. As far as the monster's arm, I decided to bring that to my friend, Mrs. Johnson.
I'm so glad you're alive, Scarlett, but what the hell is this?
The arm laid between us on the table in our security post, with its hair strands moving in waves. Girl, I have no idea. I'm still as confused as you are. Her face was twisted in disgust.
Is it still alive?
I shook my head. Trust me, it's dead, Lucy. Maybe it's rigor mortis? I don't know, but I want you to check it out.
We don't got a life biologist on the team. It's all chemists and physicists. I can work with the doctor on staff and try and figure it out. But don't expect any miracles.
I don't expect all that. All I want to know is what it is and maybe how we could fight it or defeat it or something, because my rifle barely scratched it. It bleeds a little bit, that's it. Mrs. Johnson slid on gloves.
Looking at the exterior of the arm, it looks like hardened skin. It can probably take a lot of abuse. What else?
I can't see. It was using its arms like a blind man, just hitting the walls and the floor, trying to make sure it was going in the right direction.
Blind, huh? Maybe the hair is sensitive and helps pick up on sound waves. I will have to test it.
She took up the arm, and her face immediately turned away.
Ugh, can we just set up this stuff here? I don't want to contaminate our lab with this thing.
Go ahead. The evening of the next day, a transmission came in.
Mars Volta Mining Base. Please report in. Mars Volta Mining Base. Please respond back.
The radio crackled as I fiddled with the controls of the visor line and its connection strength. Yes? Come in. This is Mars Volta Mining Base, Miss O'Hara, security officer reporting in. 628 reporting in. Please, can you hear me?
O'Hara, okay. So you're the... Could you repeat your occupation, miss?
Security officer.
She's on the whitelist? Okay. All good. Good to meet you. My name is Lieutenant Amos of the Space Marine 22nd Regiment. Claymore Platoon.
An actual soldier? Well, should I really be that surprised? There were a lot of deceased, and an aggressive threat to our lives, but I didn't expect this incident to be escalated to armed intervention. Part of me was just hoping that they would send an evac to get us out of here. Regardless, I did my best to explain the situation and give him details about where we were currently and our resources.
Well, you guys are in quite a pinch. Alright, here's how it's gonna go. We're going to launch in an hour. We'll be on a 2-week trajectory to get to you. Once we get to you, we're going to deal with the threat and evacuate you at the same time. But the priority is to get you off that planet so that we can use our weapon systems with a lot more liberty. All you have to do right now is hold it down until we get there.
It sounded easy enough for me.
So they can't see at all?
Yes, I was right in front of it, and it didn't notice me until I moved and made a sound. So I think that's how it hunts, I guess.
Alright, you're the only person I'm going to talk to going forward. But just in case, is there a second in command that I can transfer to?
Dunkley, he's the guy I work with.
Great. Keep me posted on any changes. And keep this connection open.
Don't worry. Anything I notice, I'll let you know.
Hey, just keep your head up and keep the faith. Don't worry. We're going to come for you guys. We're not going to leave you behind.
That was good to hear. And hopefully, the rest of the crew would feel the same way. So I switched over the connection codes to my on-person radio. I told the workers the situation and what's going to happen from now on. There was a lot of relief on many people's faces and a number of muted thanks given. Everybody felt better, and that was good. 2 weeks did not seem like a long time. The only problem was the people and I quickly realized that 2 others were going to make these 2 weeks feel like 200 years. The next day, a gate was breached by those monsters. We locked down the area connected to it while Dunkley and I warded off the threat of these monsters. We decided to have a meeting immediately after the mishap.
Why does the army have to run through you?
Walker scowled at me. I looked at Walker with obvious surprise. My lips opened, unsure of how I was going to explain this without ruffling any feathers.
Oh my god. Because she's in charge of security? So of course they're gonna go talk to her. I don't see you securing anything. Actually, how fast were you running when you were in the compression dock? Pretty damn fast, huh?
Dunkley snickered, and the other workers gave suppressed laughs. Walker frowned at Brady and grunted.
I'll have you know I am in charge of this mine. I would like to talk to them directly, to at least get some details on their arrival.
Don't worry, Walker. I'm going to call him in a little while, and then you can ask whatever question you want. We do have enough food, and I think the only problem right now is the gates. We already had to lock down one part of the residential complex because one of the gates were breached.
They never made those gates to protect against giant monsters. So we're on borrowed time until they decide to come for us. That's a long 2 weeks then.
What do you see on the camera? Are they coming for us?
I shook my head. No, they're moving around the caverns rather passively right now. There's no organized movements of them towards the gate. The closest gate I can see them near is the gate to the excavator garage.
Near mine number 15? That mine is cursed.
I knew nothing about that. All I knew was we needed to protect against any possible breach. Alright, is there a way we can block it or something?
We can use the extracted material that we took out of the mines. It's not much, but it can do for now.
Walker scoffed.
That stuff's supposed to be transported back to Earth.
You assume we're gonna live that long, dumbass?
You're the dumbass. That stuff is mostly softened and broken rock. It's useless as a defense. Here's what I think we need to do. Blow the roof in and shut it down from the inside.
Bradley guffawed and doubled over in shock.
And he says my ideas are a middle finger to safety. Which part of your big head did you dig up that big-brained idea from?
I know the mine's structure and makeup like the back of my hand. But I'm not a miner. That's your job. I can give you instructions on how to place the implosion charges, and all you have to do is execute. They won't be able to reach us.
It sounds like a good idea on the surface, but if we're gonna do this, we have to be careful. These creatures may be blind, but they can still hear us from what I can tell. They're going to hear those charges. Brady gave me a facial shrug.
How about some music? Then we blast it. That should distract them.
Good idea.
I'll get my boys together. And obviously you know what your job's gonna be.
That never needed any reminder. So I ran it by the lieutenant, and he was fully on board, as long as he was talking to us while we did the deed. Dunkley and I went to mine number 1 with a small group. Brady and Walker were there, with Lieutenant and Johnson on the radio listening in. Johnson, since she was already in our security room, was put on camera duty to check what was going on in the mines. We worked hard and fast to dig into the walls just outside of the gate with hand drills. It was loud, but we didn't expect them to hear it from this distance.
Scarlett! Scarlett! They're coming down Route 186 and 120!
Damn, Lucy, you don't gotta shout. Dunkley, keep sharp. They're coming. The monsters crawled down the tunnels. We fired at them. The lasers cut into their skin, and sparks of fire burst up. They cried out with those skittering sounds that chilled my bones. Brady set the charges and called from the inside.
Get back! 2 minutes to blast!
We retreated, and the explosions blew in the entrance. There was no way they were going to get through all of that ton of rock. The noise was infectious, though, and I was worried we attracted too much attention. So I called, "Lucy, what do you see?"
Hold on.
I looked around at the dust that surrounded me. Dunkley passed me and pulled off his helmet. There was a lot of shouting as Brady ordered his men around.
Scarlett!
"What do you see?" she gasped.
It's a lot of them. They're coming down Route 152.
All right, that's what we expected. Walker, all of them are moving to Mine 1. Do you think we can take out the second gate while they're over here distracted?
Yeah, we just have to work quick!
The mines are interconnected, so they might come over if they hear the next explosion. In 6 days, we destroyed 5 mine gates, and we're about to do the 6th one. The music wasn't doing as good a job of distracting them as we thought it would. That, and Walker complained that we were moving too slowly. It wasn't like we were using the more powerful drills, because we couldn't. They were too loud. After Gate 11 got breached in the night, we had to lock down that area and get any people out that were trapped in there. We needed to move faster. Lieutenant Amos felt that we should keep going at our steady pace, but Walker overruled that directive. Well, he was in charge, but I was worried we would attract too much attention if we used the heavy machinery. The next day, we fired up the motorcrafts to go inside instead of being on foot. The DC-12 Factor thundered down the tunnel and went ahead of us. It stopped at the end of the cavern path.
O'Hara, they're moving toward you!
That was way too fast, and no drilling had occurred yet. The music wasn't even attracting them. The motorcraft shouldn't be that loud to attract them.
Well, I don't know.
I stared ahead of me. Shadows moved along the ground from around the corners. Dunkley, they're coming. Move the motorcraft to set up cover. The miners moved quicker. Dunkley jumped into the motorcrafts and used them to block the path. I crouched down and pointed my rifle down the line. The monsters, 12 of them, crawled towards us, completely ignoring the miners and the fractor. Either they had a death wish, or they were trying to specifically take my partner and I out because we carried weapons. That didn't matter right now. I fired the laser. It grazed and reflected off of 2 of the monsters. They screeched and retreated. Then their arms flew past my head. Christ! I managed to slip below the motorcraft while another monster pushed into the blockage column, as if they were testing its strength. If they knew our blockade was weak, we would have already been overrun. I fired again and tried to cut down the monsters in one sweeping line since they were so close together. Their blood splattered onto the cold rock. They screamed and pulled back only for their arms to fly at us. Scraps of metal flew off the motorcrafts when their arms sliced into them.
Hey, ma'am. Maybe I can use the fractor to run them over. Our cover's too slim over here.
That assumed he could get there. It was too risky a plan. Stay where you are, Dunkley, and keep up your line of fire. He jumped back from an attacking arm and ducked under another. Dunkley sped forward and ran around a monster. What the hell was he doing? A few monsters swung their arms at him, but he barely tumbled around their strikes. Dunkley, don't... Shit! I walked briskly backwards as the rest of the monsters rolled and climbed over the motorcrafts. Brady called after me.
O'Hara, damn it! You gotta keep them back!
I knew that, but it was going to be hard by myself with so many of them. A plan was needed, but my brain never got a chance to think, for the thundering roar of the fractor. The monsters paused and turned around. Dunkley pummeled into one of the monsters, crunching their arms and the motorcrafts on his way to us. They cried in a ferocious rage as their arms and bodies got crashed. An arm flew into the fractor's back panel. I fidgeted when Dunkley bellowed in pain. The fractor spun to one side and bashed into the wall. My legs wobbled as the chaos of voices consumed the tunnel.
O'Hara, what's going on?
Dust raised as an arm flew straightened into a spear aimed at me. I fired the laser at it. It hit the monster and forced it to retreat. That was not going to last long, as more arms tapped the top of the fractor. I needed to get to Dunkley. Brady, we're abandoning this. Retreat! Go!
What about you and Dunkley?
I said go back! I pressed the trigger and the laser let loose its burn as I got close to the fractor. Its spinning wheels were spitting up a wave of stones, and its once untroubled dust. I sank below the dust and went for the compartment. An arm swung down at me. A monster was rolling its humongous round body over the fractor's roof. I fired into one arm and blasted it off its body. That skittering cry rattled my bones. I pulled open the door to the compartment. Dunkley laid in the chair. His suit was broken from the metaled series of cracks along the chest to the surface of the helmet. Please tell me he wasn't dead. I grabbed his arm and his other hand gripped my wrist. Yes! Get up, Dunkley! You're not dying here! Dunkley rolled out of the compartment and slumped onto the ground. So many confusing voices ran through my speaker. I ignored them. Dunkley was more important right now. The helmet looked cracked. If you've been compromised, hold your breath and seal off the helmet from your oxygen tank. Dunkley nodded his head. I pulled him up and he stood up with me. More arms crawled around the fractor, and the overwhelming shadows of these behemoths crawled along the lumpy ground. I did not dare look up. My heart would jump out of my chest, so I spun the rifle to fire behind me. We walked briskly under the shadow of these monsters. The rifle's energy zilched to a saddening whimper as it ran out of ammo.
O'Hara! Dunkley! Come on!
Walker was still in the tunnel and standing behind a large box in the center of the light. Everyone else was gone. What was he doing here? I told you to leave! Walker pulled up a remote for the chargers and pointed above me.
Go to the other side!
We pulled ourselves up and sped up our run as much as possible. My arm grabbed Dunkley's waist and I rolled to the ground. The chargers blasted the immense dust and rocks over us. Alarms shouted to my eardrums from all the rocks falling into my back. It did not seem too detrimental, though. I heard Dunkley whizzing through my speaker. Walker, help me get Dunkley up! Walker ran over to us. An arm flew past me and I cut through him. Walker! Walker flew and bashed into the floor. A motorcraft drifted around Walker's unmoving body and spun to a stop next to me. Brady held out his hand from the motorcraft.
What are you looking at me for? Get on!
I pushed Dunkley on first before I jumped on. Brady spun the motorcraft around as the monsters chased them. He rolled over the uneven ground and chased past the glass of the pressurization chamber. Brady screeched the motorcraft to a stop once we were inside. Shut it down! The alarms burst into the atmosphere, thick with urgency. Brady and I pulled Dunkley off the motorcraft. The riveting sound of the gate pulled down and crunched into the arms of the monsters. They bashed into the gate. We carried Dunkley to the infirmary. I didn't even look back at the gate. Dunkley was what mattered to me right now.
Sorry, ma'am. I screwed up.
I laid my hand on his cracked helmet. You're going to be okay, Dunkley. Just hold on. You're going to be okay. He was taken off by the crew to the doctors. There were a horde of people running around, and these 30-foot tall, 16-foot wide corridors were too huge for me to feel so claustrophobic. I failed.
O'Hara!
Miss O'Hara!
Scarlett!
My head was a mess, so I took off my helmet to avoid listening to anyone on the radio transmission. I need a second to think. The walk back to the old security post was supposed to be short, but it felt like I walked a mile. Damn it! I couldn't do anything right! As soon as I came in, Lucy jumped up.
Scarlett!
I nodded my head at her in respect. I'm fine. We didn't get much time to breathe because Brady came in shaking his head at me.
Christ, this is ridiculous!
A loud bang, followed by that infernal skittering noise, made Brady glance up at me. I didn't know what face he saw when he looked at me, but I knew what my mind was saying. Brady, follow me. I pulled on my helmet and went back down there. The gate was breached and we had to lock them down, plus the surrounding blocks like last time. Either way, we had to deal with the monsters moving lazily inside the compromised blocks of the mining base, and the only thing separating us was thin metal walls. Everything fell apart, and I swore Lieutenant Amos would be mad at me for losing one person and almost losing the other, especially since it was Dunkley. I felt like I failed him. I was supposed to get these people home and alive, and I couldn't even do that right. The lieutenant did not look at it that way.
Don't worry about it. You can't hammer yourself up about it. There's no right decision in this world. At least you kept everybody else safe.
Yeah, but our plan was good. It was supposed to be good, and now we're stuck here praying they don't breach further into our base.
Are they moving now?
No. I'm looking at the camera right now. They're not moving. We swore it was the sound that they were attracted to.
This may be a monster, but at the end of the day, it's still a living thing, just like us. So I'm sure they have instincts that they survive by, right? Maybe that's why they're attacking so oddly. If you can figure out their patterns, maybe we can stop it.
That assumed I could figure that out. But what choice did I have? Even if you say that, I don't know. I mean, all I know is that they attack twice per day. That's all I know.
Sounds like a pattern to me. What else? What do they do?
I racked my brain trying to figure out what was the secret to this. Then, it hit me. Son of a...
What?
It's time. It's always near midday, and the second time is after... Oh my... Hold on. Brady! Lucy! You see Brady?
No.
Get him down here now! I need to ask him something.
You figure something out, O'Hara?
I did, but I needed to confirm it, because if this was true, this changes everything. A few moments later, Brady and I walked down the corridor towards the oxygen dilation tank system.
You really think this is it?
Honestly, it better not be it, but if it is, how long do you feel the oxygen is going to last for us? Brady shook his head in the morbid horror at the thought.
Never thought I'd say this, but honestly, I don't even want to know.
Neither did I. But here we were, with only a few days left for the lieutenant to come here. This could be the end of us. Another attack would be catastrophic. So I turned off the main power for the system after I refilled all of our emergency oxygen tanks. It should work passively, but with the high tensions, the oxygen would not last long. I asked Lucy to give me a timeline, and it was 2 days short. On the last day, we had to at least turn it on and hold off the monsters until the extraction team reached us. My hunch was right. It was the vibrations of the oxygen dilation tank. That's what attracted these beasts, and with no significant vibrations in our confines, or dead space of the mines, the monsters became as quiet as mice on Christmas Eve. We waited patiently for Christmas Day, when the Space Marines would rescue us from this hellhole. Things slowed down, and I kept everybody as calm as possible. Everyone was scared, but talking needed to be kept to a minimum, as did activity. I pretty much told everybody except essential staff to just sleep. Telling scared people to sleep wasn't exactly the advice they wanted to hear, but it did work and gave us one extra day. As for the monsters, we had a plan for them. We moved most of the residents and the non-essential workers outside of medical to the parts of the base that were the furthest away from the mines. As for Brady and his boys, Lucy and the important scientists, myself, we were locked down in 3 blocks where we built defensive positions. The 3 blocks were the maintenance garage, the block with the security outpost, and the psych ward, which was my last place, with the last place being the A-source storage unit. Our job was simple: to hold off the monsters by any means necessary. Each of the other paths that we expected the monsters to breach through were tagged with traps. Lucy changed the music to a special kind of heavy bass music to confuse them. Hopefully that helped. I told everyone to wear suits, because those blocks we were protecting were going to be compromised with the unfiltered air of Mars. No mistakes could be made. I turned on the oxygen dilation tank the day before the rescuers' arrival. Its shattering shake through the floor made my heart stop. My pulse burst in my head when the alarms blew up. I inhaled and spoke into my radio. "Lucy, what do you see?"
Oh my god, Scarlett, they're moving!
I ran to the other side of the base. "Brady!" He was next to a defensive position we set up some hours before with some men.
Took you long enough. Their arms slashed to the entrance of the A6.
"When I call you, activate the trap, alright?"
Got it. And don't die on me, O'Hara.
I wouldn't dare. I moved quickly in a crouch as I swung around the corner. A thick door stood there, with a myriad of arms pierced through it. I decided to cut them down from the side with my laser. A few arms retracted, while others burnt from the fire that cut into them. Those arms recoiled, and the metal bent inward. The monsters worked together to rip down door after door. Arms snapped into the floor as one of the monsters squeezed through the 15-foot doorway into my path. 18 feet away from me, that monster lifted itself on its burnt arms and moved towards me. "A 6 and a 2! Now!" The implosion charges blew up from the floor and sent that monster crashing into the roof with a ferocious breath of vaporized matter. It took out the lights nearby, leaving me and much of the corridor in darkness, except for the weaker light sources on the wall. Dust rolled around me as debris rained on my hard exoskeleton. So many cracked plates of the roof fell into the mangled body of that monster. That should block things up. I called Lucy. "Hey, Lucy, is the music on? I can't hear a goddamn thing."
Oh, you're not going to hear it, since this thing reacts to vibrations. I decided to make it have a high subational tone. I used the arm you found to test it.
Those monsters crawled inside over their dead comrade without a care in their minds. My breath hitched. I paused. It didn't move, lest they sense my presence. They looked in my direction before moving towards the garage. Yes, it was working. By now the oxygen dilation tank should finish its recirculating, and the music would take over, leading them to their final resting place, the maintenance garage. Hours passed as we fought off some wayward monsters that broke into the psych ward. Lucy lost her shit and kept screaming into my ears, but I already pushed them back. Lieutenant Amos' ship was almost here. 3 hours until arrival. We just needed a little bit more time. The only problem, the oxygen dilation tank would recirculate the filters in 2 hours. We had to hold on until then. Time passed as I patrolled outside the security post. The paths were empty except for the unmoving arms of the monsters, sitting around in limbo, across from the psych ward. The skittering roared up once the oxygen dilation tank did its thing. "Brady, it's time. Get your men up, because they're coming your way right now."
Right, I'll hold it down.
Scarlett! Scarlett! They're coming!
Yes, I know. I'm going now. Those arms retracted from view as the monsters started moving. I intended to follow them and cut them off, then an arm flew over my head. My heart jumped into my throat as I rolled and lifted the rifle. I fired it and cut into its arm before the monster's body squeezed into the corridor and smacked me to the ground. My laser rifle flew out of my hand.
Scarlett!
The monster pushed up as its arms extended. The back smashed the light in the roof and darkness resumed to take its rightful place. That was when I caught sight of a lump pushing out from under its body. I froze in horror. What kind of monstrosity was that? That lump spread out into fangs as the monster crawled over me. There was no way in hell I was going to be eaten. My hands searched for the rifle. Something moved over me. I rolled to the side before an arm stabbed into the floor. Shit! Where was my rifle? Fuck it! I crawled right under it as its arms hit the floor looking for me.
Scarlett, I can't see you!
I ran off as the arms clipped the walls. The monster chased me down the corridor and my legs pumped me forwards.
Scarlett!
I could not respond to her right now. The helmet rattled against my neck. My breath became shorter than my options. Running out of the depths of the darkness and into the shine of the light, I turned down another corridor. It was only then I saw the compartment boxes that I realized I was near the maintenance garage. The monsters cried out from Brady's voice slicing through their ranks. Crap! I looked behind me and saw a huge shadow traveling up the corridor and now the wall. The monster was close. I got no weapon, and I was now trapped. My only other choice was to move forwards.
Scarlett!
I'm alive, Lucy! Stop shouting in my ears! I ain't deaf!
I'm patching through Lieutenant Amos to you. He's almost here.
Before that, tell Brady and everyone else to fall back. Don't lure the monsters elsewhere.
What about you?
Patch the lieutenant through. She grumbled something incoherent before I heard the crackle of static.
Miss O'Hara, we'll be there in 15 minutes.
A lot of monster arms came into crossroads around me. You better make it quick. I'm drowning in sweat here. I needed to move. My feet went on tiptoe as I made swift and light steps around the arms in the closest corner. The monsters rushed forward, but tumbled over each other in their chase of me. I escaped their clutches and reached the inside of the 60-foot-tall room of the maintenance garage. It was filled with many old machines and parts sitting on the ground, if not hanging from threads. Fractors, trucks, and motorcrafts lingered in a confused maze around walled-off sections where workers would have made their repairs. I found a speaker at the top of a dismantled drill platform in a grilled metal container that was clearly beaten up. Its subwoofer pulled in and out with a fury, even in this silence. The monsters walked around it, with their arms raised. Occasionally, those arms struck at the speaker's container. I needed to find a hiding place. A pain raptured through me. My helmet hits the floor, and despite the cushioning around my neck, it did not stop the crack that formed down the middle of the helmet screen. Crap, crap, crap! My hands tried to grab something, but I was pulled like a rag doll. I spun around to see that same monster, with that infernal mouth opening over me. I pulled my leg back and swung it into its mouthpiece, soliciting a loud skittering noise. I caught sight of a pointed shard of concrete and thrust it into the mouth. Dark fluid spewed onto my hand. I pulled away and tumbled behind a fractor. Getting my feet off the ground was my best option to avoid them noticing me. So I jumped into the seating of the fractor, just as a monster bashed into it. I screamed out in surprise. My other leg burned immensely from being punctured. Monsters swarmed around the fractor looking for me. One arm tapped the front window, trying to figure out if I was in there. I froze. Every part of my body. It hurt so bad. Alarms blasted over my screen, and a crack along my helmet screen worried me. Lucy, what's the least painful death? Being killed by these devils, or breathing carbon dioxide?
O'Hara, don't you fucking ask me that! Keep the faith!
Faith already left my soul. A loud crunching noise made my heart sink. Then my torso moved when the seat pushed forward. They're crushing me inside here. Alright, forget my previous idea of not moving. I lifted myself up, and in the brazen shock of the moment, I swear I saw an angel. But it was only Lieutenant Amos floating down towards me, thanks to the thrusters on his battle armor.
Are you hearing me, Miss O'Hara?
I tried to keep my voice as steady as possible. I hear you.
Come out and move to the side of the vehicle.
You crazy? I'm surrounded! He glided over those ugly monsters, and never too close to make them feel the tickle of his thrusters.
Just trust me, O'Hara.
I inhaled and steeled my heartbeat. It was important for me to be as soft in my movements as possible. I moved across the seat and pushed myself out. The more I moved back, the bigger the swatch of blood I saw on the seat. A loud thud froze me. I turned around and saw the vehicle door swaying. My bad leg must have hit it. It was an accident, but when I raised my head and saw that beast's muddled face right next to the window across from me, it was clear these monsters didn't accept mistakes. I could just run, but I kept my fear on the back burner and made slow steps down to the floor below me. That skittering buzz infested my mind. I could not see the lieutenant now. My boot touched the floor. My leg hurt worse than hell. I pulled my head past the insertion of the door and saw the other monster 5 feet from me. It moved its arms and slapped the ground in a hungry attempt to find me. I froze. A rumbling behind me made me shiver. I turned my head and saw through white smoke falling over me. It dissipated quickly, and Lieutenant Amos dropped down to the ground several feet away from the monster. The monster spun and threw its arms at him, but his thrusters sent him back up in the air. It was brief though, and he touched down several feet further back. What was he doing? He should be flying off, but he kept going up and down in quick succession. Was he trying to get himself killed? Regardless, the monster followed him, with the gloomy cries of a cockroach on its deathbed. But Lieutenant Amos kept playing with it. It was only when the other ones started following him that I realized Lieutenant Amos's plan. He was luring them from my position. Lieutenant Amos kept playing with them for another minute before he blasted above them. He curved over their oblivious heads and flew towards me.
Lift your arms, O'Hara!
In one fell swoop, he picked me up and flew down a corridor before he slowed his exhaust several feet away from the end. With me in his arms, he carried me out of there, and I lost consciousness. My eyes opened, but everything was sandy-colored. Where was the crack across my helmet? I moved my hand and touched my face. Oh, I didn't have it on. I turned and saw on the bed alongside me was the closed-eyed Dunkley. I groaned, "Hey, who's in here? How long was I out? Where are the residents?" My attempt to sit up sent an uncomfortable tremor up the back of my leg.
Hey, easy. We're on the ship now. The rest of the citizens, too. We're going to get out of here, don't worry.
Dunkley smiled at me as he rubbed his eyes. My despair lifted, seeing Dunkley was better. My head hurts, but we are alive. I never expected this to be my exit plan at all, but a lot of things never went as planned. Hey sci-fi horror fans, it's Kira Rhodes. Thanks to all the VAs who helped with the production of this video. And thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Craving for another scary story? Click that video on your screen. Until next time everyone, and remember, stay cosmic.